Hi, my name is Mike Smolinsky, and I'm the managing editor of Neurology Now magazine. I'm here with Dr. Petra Kaufmann. She is the director of the Office of Clinical Research at NINDS. Hi, Dr. Kaufmann.
Hi, Mike.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
I was wondering if you could explain to our audience a little bit about who the NINDS is and what your role at NINDS is.
So I work for the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, or NINDS, and we are part of the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And the National Institutes of Health is a federal agency that funds biomedical research to improve the health of the American people. And while we're located in Bethesda, 90% of our funding goes all over the United States and sometimes even beyond to fund research. My particular area is to oversee clinical research. Clinical research means research that directly involves patients, and that's really ultimately what we are about. We want to do research that improves the health and reduces the burden of neurological disease. So I oversee all the clinical trials for the Institute that are done by investigators at the academic centers and hospitals throughout the United States.
Are there any particular trials that you think are would be of interest to our readers? Are there any really important trials that you think are being conducted right now?
Yes. So in order, for many neurological diseases, we don't actually have treatments at all, and for others, we don't have treatments that are really as effective as we would like them to be. So the only way to get new treatments to patients is through clinical trials. So treatments have to be evaluated in clinical trials, which is where patients volunteer to participate, and they are then monitored by doctors who give them medication to see what the effect is. And that's the only way to get new treatments approved, or for doctors to better understand how treatments work. And we have at any given time hundreds of trials, including at least 25 or 30 of large, what we call phase 3 clinical trials, which are giving us an answer as to whether a new treatment is effective. And a number of advances have come out of the NINDS-funded trials. One treatment, for example, TPA, the blockbuster treatment for stroke, was developed in NINDS-funded clinical trials. And at the current time, we have a large number of clinical trials looking at stroke prevention, for example, where we compare different combinations of medication for stroke prevention. We have trials looking at how people with a brain hemorrhage could best be treated. So I think there are some really important trials that will have impact on how neurologists treat their patients.
That's great. I think many of our readers should know about NINDS. Why is NINDS so important? Why is the work that you do so important? And what should patients do? What should they ask their doctors about in terms of clinical research?
So the work is so important because without clinical trials, we can't get better treatment. So some trials are, of course, done by the pharmaceutical industry, but the pharmaceutical industry has to also take into account, for example, market considerations. So when a treatment is no longer patentable, or when it's about comparing two different approaches, the private sector wouldn't necessarily be able to do it because there's no good business model behind that. However, we are in a position where we can fund things that don't have an immediate monetary return, but that have great benefit for patients and that provide important answers. So the NINDS, or Federal Funding Agency, can do research in rare diseases, can do research comparing existing drugs, and can also do a lot of course, early phase research to reduce the risk then for the private sector to move into a neurological indication. So there's many gaps that nobody would fill other than a federally funded research agency. And I think what patients can do is to ask their doctors about clinical trials, because everybody with a neurological disease can help get answers that might benefit them personally, but also benefit other people with the disease. So if you or someone in your family or friend has a neurological disease, encourage them to ask the neurologist about clinical trials. There may not be opportunities at any given time for everybody because we just don't have trials to canvas all diseases, but it would be really helpful, I think, in advance progress in neurology if people would engage into clinical trials. Some of our trials have difficulty enrolling participants in a timely manner, and a lot of times we found when we asked patients why they hadn't considered participation, it was that they didn't know about it. There's also great publications like Neurology Now. There's online resources where people can find out about trials. The NIH has a website about when you Google about clinical trial participation. But ultimately, I think patients, neurologists would be a great resource to let them know about clinical trials.
Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
My pleasure.
And for Neurology Now, we'll see you next time.